Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to All Praise Picks. Today we're looking at the NFL. We have the Cincinnati Bengals playing against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas on December 9th, 2024, on Monday Night Football. Currently, the Bengals are 4-8, which is third in the AFC North, and the Cowboys surprisingly have a better record than the Bengals at 5-7, which is third in the NFC East. I think both these teams did not have the season that they were expecting, but um, this should still be a good game in my opinion. I do lean towards the Bengals winning this game and performing well, which we'll see in my parlays. But uh, I'll give a quick breakdown of how I think the game will go, and then show you guys my parlays that I placed on BetMGM. As always, I'll break down the lines, give you my thoughts, and hopefully, if you tap in, we can all win. So, looking at the Bengals and their offense, they currently have a top 10 offense and a bottom 10 defense in the NFL. And I think that their offensive game in this one will be um, just as good as they've been playing overall this season and possibly better. The Cowboys defense is getting healthier, but Trayvon Diggs, who's their number one corner, is still questionable with an injury, so he may or may not play in this game. And I do think that if he does play in this game, the Bengals will still try to pass the ball. They lean upon Joe Burrow to facilitate their offense, and they are a pass first offense. But I do think that if Diggs doesn't play, that the offense would obviously fare better. And I do think that when you look at the skill players for the Bengals, you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, which are two number one receivers in the NFL. And having them on the same team is great for Joe Burrow to be able to make big plays in this game. And I do think they will bounce back after losing a very tough game versus the Steelers. They scored over 38 points in that game, but still lost 44-38 because of their defense. And I do think that their defense may fare better in this game, playing against a Cowboys offense that doesn't have Dak Prescott. Now looking at the Cowboys offense, I do think that they may play better in this game, especially since Cooper Rush has had more starts under his belt, and they are playing a Bengals defense that has been pretty bad all season long. They give up the sixth most passing yards and the 10th most rushing yards, and I do think that the Cowboys will probably lean towards passing the ball because I think that the Bengals will be able to score in this game, leading to the Cowboys needing to pass the ball in order to keep the game close. But if the game is close, I do think that there will be increased involvement by Rico Dowdle through running the ball. But it honestly just depends on which offensive line will show up for the Cowboys. So currently, Zach Martin, who's an All-Pro offensive guard in his prime, he's out for this game, and also Tyler Guyton is questionable with an injury. So those are two key players for the Cowboys that, well, one for sure, Zach will not play in this game, and if Guyton doesn't play, that's a big loss, especially from the tackle position for them. So starting off with these parlays, I focused on Chase Brown rushing and receiving yards for these first two. Starting off on the one on the left side at minus 135, I have Chase Brown to score a touchdown and to have 50 plus rushing yards in the game. Uh, he's been the Bengals' number one running back this season, and uh, he honestly has been pretty good as a running back that isn't highly coveted amongst the likes of Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry in the NFL. Uh, he's had over 50 rushing yards in three out of his last four games, and I think that if he gets the rushing attempts, he'll be able to run on this Cowboys defense. In terms of the rushing touchdown or just scoring a touchdown in general, the Cowboys on the season have given up the second most rushing touchdowns to running backs this season, so they're pretty susceptible to giving up rushing touchdowns. And Chase Brown is pretty good at scoring via the rush or even a receiving touchdown, and he scored two touchdowns in his last three games, and I think that he has a good chance of scoring in this one. So at minus 135, if you place one unit on the parlay on the left side, you have a 75% return just about. Um, and as always, just have financial consciousness and bankroll management when deciding to place the bet. Now looking at the parlay on the right side at plus 145, it is a higher odds parlay because I included receiving yards rather than rushing yards. Uh, on the season, especially recently, he's been very involved in their passing game. He's had over three receptions in his last four games and at least 30 yards in each of those games. So for him to have 25, as long as the offensive game plan stays the same for the Bengals, um, I think he will have a good chance of getting over 25 receiving yards, and he may score a rushing and receiving touchdown in this game. Now looking at the wide receivers, I have included the top three wide receivers that are playing in this game. Starting off with Jamar Chase, I have him to have over 50 yards, and the same is true for T. Higgins and CeeDee Lamb. I think that the Bengals, like I mentioned, they'll have their offense run through Joe Burrow, and he should be able to get the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And the Cowboys on the season have been very susceptible to the deep pass. I think they ranked top five, if I remember, in most receptions allowed of 25 plus yards, and are in the top three of most receptions allowed of over 40 yards. And Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are like the definition of big play receivers. More so Jamar Chase than T. Higgins. T. Higgins is more so of an intermediate and short passing receiver, while Jamar Chase is more of the big play deep guy. But I do think that both of them have a good chance of going over 50 yards, especially if Joe Burrow is passing the ball. And I have him to have over 200 passing yards, which I think he should be able to get easily against this Cowboys defense that hasn't been playing great defense all season long. And even if Trayvon Diggs plays in this game, I don't think that they'll keep Joe Burrow from passing 200 yards if he plays the entire game. Now looking at CeeDee Lamb, I do think that he has a good chance of getting over 50 yards, but I do wonder how the Bengals are going to guard him. Over the season, like I mentioned, they have a very bad pass defense, but they could easily double CeeDee Lamb. And Cooper Rush, who's the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, isn't as risk prone, I should say, as Dak Prescott. He doesn't throw risky balls. He doesn't really throw the ball downfield at all. But I do think that if CeeDee Lamb has the volume of targets that he could garner in this game, he should be able to get over 50 yards. And he also only had 2 receptions for 39 yards in his last game versus the Giants. So I do think that he does bounce back in this game and probably has over 5 receptions in this game, which would lead to him having over 50 yards. So at minus 105, this is essentially a plus money parlay. If you bet one unit, you get about 97% return on your investment, which is a great return on your investment, and similar to the other parlays, just have bankroll consciousness and overall management of your finances if deciding to place this bet with me. So for these next 2 parlays, I just took a deeper dive into the Bengals receivers, starting off with Jamar Chase. I have him to have over 75 yards in this game. In his last 3 games, he's had over 75 yards in each of those games, and on the season, he rarely goes under 75 yards, especially lately. In his last 3 games, he had 264 yards versus Baltimore on 11 catches, 75 against the Los Angeles Chargers on 7 catches, and 86 against the Pittsburgh Steelers on 6 catches. So I do think that he is Joe Burrow's number 1 target. The only apprehension I have necessarily is if Trayvon Diggs does play, he probably will guard Jamar Chase primarily throughout the entire game. But this is Diggs' first game back in a while, so I do think that Jamar Chase will be able to get the advantage of him on a few of these catches. I also included the Bengals money line for this parlay because I do think that the Bengals are the overall better team. And even though the Cowboys defense is getting healthier, I just think that Joe Burrow will be able to make the right plays. So at plus 125, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, it's a 125% return on your investment, which is a great return. And as you see in this parlay, it's essentially the exact same as the Jamar Chase one, except I have T. Higgins for 75 plus receiving yards. I think that either Jamar Chase or T. Higgins will have over 75, or at least a good chance to get over 75 receiving yards in this game. The Cowboys have been very bad against number 1 receivers, and like I mentioned, Chase and Higgins are both number 1 receivers in their own right and are very capable of being a number 1 receiver on any other NFL team. Looking at T. Higgins' stats, he's had over 75 receiving yards in his last 5 games, and he has just a great volume of targets, especially in the intermediate routes. And I do think that if the Cowboys are able to get pressure on Joe Burrow, he'll be more likely to pass it to T. Higgins rather than Jamar Chase, because T. Higgins will be closer to Joe Burrow in relation to the offensive line, because T. Higgins runs more intermediate routes, whereas Jamar Chase runs more deeper routes. So at plus 155, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 155% return on your investment, which is a little bit more than the previous parlay with Jamar Chase. But I do think that as long as one of these wins, it'll be a good return on investment. So I decided to place both of them, and we'll watch the game to see if they both are able to go over 75 receiving yards. So these last 2 parlays that I have higher odds parlays. So I reduced my unit size in half. So instead of 50, I have 25, just so it's a overall just safer bet, given that the odds are much higher compared to the previous parlays that I showed. So I have Brandon Cooks first to have over 3 receptions in this game. So Cooks was injured throughout the season, but he just returned in his last game, and he had 7 targets from Cooper Rush. And Cooks does run more, uh, I would say, intermediate routes and can catch a few screen passes as well. So I do think that he has a good chance of getting over 3 receptions as long as his targets are similar to his last game. Um, I also have Rico Dowdle to have under 16 and a half receiving yards. So when looking at Rico Dowdle's stats, I didn't think that he would have a good game running the ball or receiving the ball. So as you'll see in the next parlay that I have, I decided to combine that. But in this one, I have Rico Dowdle to have under 16 and a half receiving yards, just to isolate it because um, the Bengals' run defense can be bad. And if this is a close game, he likely will be able to generate um, receiving yards gradually throughout the game because the Cowboys will continue to run the ball. But in looking at his receiving yards, he hasn't gone over 16 and a half receiving yards in his last 4 games. And the closest that he's gone was against Washington, where he had 12 receiving yards on 3 receptions. And he hasn't had more than 3 receptions in any of the last 4 games. So I think that while the Bengals defense isn't really good on paper, when it comes to rush defense, they are pretty good at limiting running backs from getting long receptions and receiving yards in total. So I do think that he'll likely go under 16 and a half in this one. And I also included Joe Burrow to have over 2 passing touchdowns in this game. I think that the Bengals will have a good game, and in order for them to have a good game, Joe Burrow will likely need to throw touchdown passes. And if he doesn't throw a touchdown pass, Chase Brown will likely be the one to score a touchdown, which is why I had him scoring a touchdown in the initial parlay that I showed you guys. But at plus 360, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 360% return on your investment, which is a sizable return on your investment, but the same principle applies just to have bankroll consciousness and your overall understanding of how many bets you're placing and how much you are placing in total when deciding to place a bet. So for this last parlay, I included CD Lamb instead of Brandon Cooks. I do think that the Cowboys will likely have to pass the ball in this game, and if um, Cam Taylor-Britt continues to play as poorly as he has been playing, who's the #1 corner for the Cincinnati Bengals, I just think that CeeDee Lamb will be able to get the best of him, and I do think that CeeDee Lamb will bounce back from his relatively poor performance that he had against the Giants in their last game. Instead of taking Rico Dowdle to have under 16 and a half receiving yards, I had him to have under 88 total rushing plus receiving yards. I think that if the Bengals are somehow able to stop the run, Rico Dowdle will likely go well under this mark. But if the Cowboys are able to run the ball and the game is close, I just don't really see Rico Dowdle getting over 90 yards, especially if the Cowboys offense stalls out and they're forced to pass the ball on 3rd and 4th down. And for the last leg of this parlay, I have Joe Burrow to have under 1 interception thrown. Uh, the Cowboys defense overall just has not been good at generating interceptions, and Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks at not throwing interceptions. He has 30 touchdowns on only 5 interceptions this season in the 12 games that they've played, and I think that especially being in a dome, there isn't any worry for weather. So I do trust Joe Burrow to not throw an interception in this game, and if he does throw an interception, it would likely come from a batted ball or just the ball bouncing in the wrong area rather than Joe Burrow throwing it directly to the defense. And I just trust him not to have a batted ball. But at plus 340, this parlay is similar odds to the plus 361. But I still had half a unit size on this one rather than a full unit just because of the higher odds. But at plus 340, if you invest 1 unit, you have a 340% return on your investment, which is great. And I do feel pretty good about these parlays. There is only one game as it is Monday Night Football, so I did have more time to do some research, and I'm excited to watch this game. I do think that the Bengals will win, and should be able to put some points on the board. But appreciate you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more NFL, NBA, and a video I'm calling the Chimney Challenge, which is a ladder challenge where I turn $10 into 10K in 10 days. I will be starting that today, and hopefully by this time next week, we'll be well on our way to 10K. But appreciate you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Until next time, peace.